face, and that's the way you're going to do it.
This is the Rob Dibble Show.
Joining us on the Bobby V Sports Tech Hotline, one of the best in her business, Stephania Bell, senior writer for ESPN and injury expert. How are you, Stephania?
Hey, Stephania.
I'm good. Just another Monday in the aftermath of an NFL Sunday. Trying to pick up some pieces.
I know, man. It's like it's like an ambulance. You run around picking up the parts. I wanted to start, though, with a baseball player that got injured early in the year last year, played the entire season on a partially torn UCL in his elbow. Bryce Harper was able to hit, couldn't throw, so he couldn't really play the field, didn't play the field in the postseason. What's the prognosis on something like that? And is it like a preventative surgery sometimes? Because there's been guys like Tanaka and other players that have finished out their careers with a partially torn ligament in their elbow, but it wasn't Bryce Harper, wasn't meant for him. And then you got Josh Allen with Buffalo. It seems like he might have had a strained UCL. What are the differences?
Yeah, well, you ask me these questions and it kills me. I'm like, how long do we have? Let me try and give you the Reader's Digest on ulnar collateral injuries in a few seconds. But we all know that in pitchers, the worst case scenario, if you will, is the result of Tommy John surgery. You have a tear of the UCL, you have to repair it, and we know it costs them a year and a half. With a position player, the good news when you have Tommy John surgery, you can come back more quickly, right? Because you don't have the same demands of that high-velocity, repetitive throwing. Now, you play the outfield like Bryce Harper, you're going to have to be able to get back to intense throwing and be able to throw hard and from a distance. That will take longer than hitting, which is why you've heard reports that he could be back as early as May. To hit might take a little longer to get him back in the field. But certainly, you don't miss the same kind of time as a pitcher. But when you talk about comparing injuries, it really is because, like any ligament injury, there's a spectrum, right? It can be a mild sprain where you have really the structural integrity is intact, but you create some inflammation around the ligament, all the way to a third degree, which is a complete tear. What guys will tell you who have had ulnar collateral ligament tears is they just lose the ability to throw hard, because it's instrumental in providing stability when you throw. And that's what happened to Bryce Harper. Now, in partial tears, there is now a procedure of an ulnar collateral ligament repair, which is different than reconstruction, where you have to take a graft. That graft has to heal, and that is part of what takes so long. This newer procedure has been around for a few years of a repair with an internal brace. They're actually tacking down the old ligament from where it tore and reinforcing it with a synthetic suture tape, and the return is much faster. But there's very specific criteria for repair, and one of the main things is the ligament has to be in good shape. It has to be good tissue quality, because if it's not, then that type of repair isn't going to work anyway. Number two has to do with the location of the tear, because that can influence whether it's amenable to a repair versus requiring a reconstruction. So there are a lot of factors that go into play, and there was some reporting around Bryce Harper's injury that his surgeon, Dr. Neil Elatrash, who's in Los Angeles, one of the best when it comes to elbow injuries in baseball players, had told him that they wouldn't really know exactly what they would have to do until they got in there. And that is sometimes the case when you're considering a repair or reconstruction, is they have to actually see what the ligament looks like inside and whether it's going to be amenable to a repair or need a full procedure. And it sounds like he had Tommy John surgery and had the ulnar nerve transposed, where you're actually repositioning the nerve so that it doesn't get irritated, hopefully going forward. So there's your long answer. Tried to whittle it down as best I could.
All right, moving from the elbow to the rib cage, but staying with that Bills-Jets game, and just found out Mike White's injury update. He is day-to-day with a rib issue. And just a general question on ribs in the NFL. Exactly what are we looking for with a guy with a rib injury, especially at the quarterback position, whether or not he's going to be good to go for Week 15?
Yeah, the problem with rib injuries is, number one, the pain. The pain is so intense that it's hard to function. So they have to be able to function as a quarterback. Sometimes they get through the game where they're hurt based on adrenaline, and it gets tougher in the days that follow. The other thing is breathing. Every time you breathe, you're moving the ribs. So if you have a rib fracture, even if it's a tiny one, every time you take a breath, it hurts. When you rotate your trunk to throw as a thrower, you're moving the ribs. So every time you do that, it hurts. So it's not even always about the contact you're going to take. Obviously, that's a concern, but it's just about being able to function. So that's what they'll be looking at across the course of the week. They can do a pain-numbing injection depending on the location of the injury, which is usually nowadays done under fluoroscopy, so they can actually see where they're placing the needle. But that's a case-by-case basis. The other type of rib injury you can get is a rib cartilage injury, which is what Justin Herbert, the quarterback for the Chargers, had. Those can actually be more problematic than an injury to the rib bone itself, because cartilage, it does not heal well. It stays painful for a long time. Herbert looks much better now, but if you've been watching him play, he really struggled for the first few weeks after that injury.
Talking to Stephania Bell, injury expert with ESPN. AZ Fudd, I mean, the UConn women have been decimated by injuries. Just got a concussion on one of their other players. But let me ask you about her knee. Is this more of a bone bruise in the knee area, or is this some kind of ligament or cartilage injury?
I don't think we know, based on the fact that they really haven't released much information. I mean, the 3 to 6 week timeline really could represent a variety of things, and that's why it's tough, and we don't like to speculate, because usually that's when we're proven wrong. But just knowing that she has also a history of a multi-ligament knee injury on the same side makes them want to be extra cautious, I'm sure. And while after you have a reconstruction, the knee is often more stable with the graft. I mean, that's often the case. But you can have more susceptibility to other things on that side. So the good news is nothing about it sounded particularly serious, but I think given her history, they're going to want to be extra cautious.
Did you see the contusion on Russell Wilson's forehead yesterday?
I did, unfortunately. I'm only laughing because, like, when you work in medicine, you see these things. The face, like, you can get brutal with swelling. Like, it's very easy to get a big lump on your head just because it's so easy to swell there.
Now, does that have, like, a sign of anything more severe than a regular concussion protocol? No?
No, it really, it was just an unfortunate lump that he had on the side of his head, and I felt badly for him. It's been a rough season for him, to say the least. But they were actually, he was having a decent game, and then to have that happen. But I think a couple things from the concussion protocol. He went from the medical blue tent where they do the initial. They can do like a quicker screening. And then if they feel the need is warranted to go into more in-depth evaluation, they'll take the player back to the locker room, and that's what they did with Russell Wilson. So as soon as they do that, it means they want to get a look at a number of other things that aren't in the initial screen, and it pretty much tells you they were concerned right away for a concussion, and then obviously he didn't return, and he'll be in the protocol now.
Deebo Samuel. Depending on
how where it hurts.
Yeah,
my team.
I know.
Oh, man.
But again, with a guy that needs his legs, and San Francisco is in a pretty good situation here, winning the football game. Do you need to rush guys that have these high ankle sprains?
Oh, goodness, no. You definitely don't want to. I mean, high ankle sprain, I feel like now we talk about this so much more.
I think we ask you every time you're on.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I mean, like the collective we, everybody recognizes, right. They hear it and they go, oh, no, not a high ankle sprain. Whereas before people were like, what? They didn't really even know there was a differentiation in ankle sprains. And I think, number one, we're better at differentiating these on the medical side, and we're better at testing for them. And now they're actually categorized in different types of high ankle sprains. And so we know about them more, but they are harder to recover from, both because of the location and what they do for the ankle. And so even the mild sprains typically take a couple of weeks. I don't know if you guys saw Mike Williams for the Chargers when he tried to come back after initially having a high ankle sprain. He had one play, catch went up, came down, landed on it, and he was out again for another 3 weeks. So these are tough, and anytime you plant and rotate, it's going to stress those ligaments. I mean, I saw the game. As you guys know, I'm a 49ers fan. I was glued to the entire game. I didn't care what the score was. I was going to watch it till the end. But when Debo went down, it looked bad, and he got rolled up on from behind. And if you saw his left foot got rotated, got forced into being rotated outwards. That is a classic mechanism for a high ankle. But on top of it, the defender fell on top of him. It twisted his knee and kind of bent him backwards. He really could have ended up with a fracture, a significant knee injury, and who knows what to his back, the way he went down. So he came away with no fracture, reportedly. Sometimes you'll have a mild MCL sprain, and they won't even really report it because it's so secondary to the high ankle. But all things considered, came away from it better than he could have, and I still expect it to be a multi-week absence.
I know this one is new, but ACL, MCL for Mr. Terrence Steele, right tackle for Dallas Cowboys. And we were told that these braces these linemen wear are just kind of a placebo effect, and they don't really do anything. But another guy goes down on an offensive line. It feels like offensive linemen are few and far between to find in this league. But an ACL, MCL for an offensive lineman seems like that guy's going to be done for a while.
Yeah, a typical recovery in these, it's actually pretty universal regardless of the position. The demands are different, whether you're a skill position player or, you play in the trenches. But a multi-ligament knee injury, you're really looking at a year to feel comfortable about them coming back. And so as they look ahead to the start of next season, it wouldn't be impossible for him to be ready. We'd never say that because guys recover at different rates, but it will be pushing the envelope to have him ready for training camp. The thing you mentioned about the braces, it's very interesting. I mean, this is the holy grail of bracing will be when they can prevent ACL. The braces are really excellent at controlling lateral movement, so like MCL sprains and things like that, you get a lot of medial protection. Those guys really need that protection because of the way they block and get bent. If you look at their knees, they get bent into a position where they're stressing the MCL all the time. And the braces are pretty good at preventing shear, straight forward and backward. But the ACL is a rotational ligament, and you're talking about rotation within the knee joint, and nobody's really mastered the ability to control the small amount of rotation it sometimes takes to end up rupturing the ACL, and that's why you can be wearing a brace and still get injured.
Fantasy football expert as well as injury expert, Stephania Bell from ESPN. All right, so where did you have Brock Purdy on your depth chart, and should we be drafting this guy for the playoffs?
Well, I played him in a matchup that I needed to win yesterday, and unfortunately, I also had T. Higgins, who played one snap and got me 0.
Yeah, I have T. Higgins. He didn't play, right?
Yeah, that's a whole
Bad
other
hammy.
conversation about what the Bengals did there. But Brock Purdy, what a delight! I mean, not only for my fantasy team where he put it up. It was funny because I think I posted a tweet where through the half it was like Brock Purdy had something like, 18. He had double-digit fantasy points, let's put it that way, and Tom Brady had like 3. And things that you never saw coming, right? But I'm just so happy for him to be able to step up under the kind of pressure he's under. Here's a team who went all in to get Christian McCaffrey because they're really in win-now mode. They had Jimmy G back, and that whole story. I mean, I was so sad for Jimmy after everything he'd been through to have basically a season-ending injury. And then this kid comes in with no expectation. So playing with false money, I suppose, has really just kind of caught everyone's attention, especially the guys in the locker room who apparently absolutely love him. And what a great story, right? Last one drafted in last year's draft and proving that everybody matters. There is no Mr. Irrelevant.
You gave our listeners Damian Pierce at the very beginning of the year, Houston running back, and he has been balling. Had a great day. Yes. Listen, I like to give out the kudos to those who give good fantasy advice, like yourself, Stephania. But I need another one. Zonovan Knight, Jets, is that one I should take? Who's the next running back that nobody knows about right now that's going to get a lot of time, week 15 through 17?
Oh, come on. You're asking the impossible. Everybody's doing running backs. As teams try and protect their players, they're going into full committee mode on running backs. And those of us who are playing fantasy football want nothing to do with committees. And so we were concerned that what would happen with Bam White when Carter came back into the rotation. And sure enough, Michael Carter gets more snaps than Bam White does. And that doesn't mean that he's irrelevant as far as fantasy production, because he's still going to be fantasy productive. They love his speed. I think he's still absolutely somebody you should have. I mean, at this point, you might be playing the matchups depending on who your running backs are, but it's tough with running back because look what's happening over in Kansas City. I mean, how many fantasy points did Jerick McKinnon have? And Jerick McKinnon was supposed to be
over 32. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Seems like you were playing him or something, Dibs. How do you know that?
No,
right off
I'm
the top
looking
of
at
your
him
head?
right now because that was.
But I mean, he was supposed to be originally utilized in certain situations. Like we saw him and definitely the red zone was part of that. But, remember when it was Clyde Edwards-Hilaire's job at the start of the season? Does anybody remember that? And then Isaiah Pacheco was he was going to light the world on fire, and he is fun to watch, and he is terrific, but Jerick McKinnon is getting the ball and producing more for fantasy managers right now. And that's where it's really tough. I mean, even in Detroit, we're seeing something. Jamal Williams seems to be getting all the touchdowns, and DeAndre Swift, after they had really leaned on him, they scaled back again. It's hard to find, unless it's Josh Jacobs playing for the Raiders right now, it is hard to find a running back who a team is fully committed to as the feature back, other than Dameon Pearson, who now has an ankle issue that we have to watch out for.
You are the best, young lady. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll talk to you soon.
You call me young lady, and I'll be on your show anytime.
You're a lot younger than me. Thank you, Stephania.
Thank you, Stephania.
All right. Have a great day, guys.
You too. Take care. Stephania Bell, everybody. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back with the first dibs question of the day.